Try saying something for me.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear you, man.
Putting the sound on. I don't know what it is.
Are your speakers muted or anything?
It's on the phone. It's not mute. I'm muted.
It's always something. Sure. I don't see anything wrong on my end. Let me see. It might be my end. Hold on.
Can you hear me now?
I hear you now. You hear me? DA.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. All right, you ready to get started?
Yeah.
Yeah, my computer just made some change on its own somehow. I don't see you on screen anymore. Did you change something else?
Hold on 1 second.
I just see your logo. There you go.
All right.
All right, you ready?
Yeah.
All right, we'll jump into it. This is just kind of, like I said, again, I'm trying some new things out for 2018 and just working with some live streaming a little bit, just to kind of move into some, alternative ways of getting some content out there, getting some videos out there. So thanks for your time today.
Yeah, no problem.
I know we were supposed to hook up for the podcast this week, but scheduling got a little tricky and whatnot. So I was like, man, let's see if we can just chop it up on here. And then I thought Matt was going to be able to join us, but I guess he's got something going on today. So we'll jump into some NFL topics and maybe hit on basketball really quickly since it's just me and you, and maybe a boxing question or something. But I wanted to try to keep this one a little shorter. Real quick, for anybody that clicks on this link later on, nobody's in the chat room right now, but tell people a little bit about yourself and the real deal with Damian Adams and everything that you have going on, with your sports content creation.
Yeah, man, I'm Damian Adams from The Real Deal with Damian Adams. It's a podcast that's available on iTunes, Speaker Radio, a lot of other places. It's real sports talk for real sports fans. So we cover a lot of basketball, football, a little boxing, everything that's going on in sports, we pretty much cover on it. And I like to have conversations with the best sports minds in the world. That's why I had you on the show before, a lot of other people who know their sports. And we're not scared to touch anything, man. Anything that's going on in the sports world, we're going to touch it. Anything from Colin Kaepernick to, what's going on NFL Network and everything in between. So it's a show that if you're a real sports fan, you'll love it. And also got the YouTube channel, The Real Deal with Damian Adams as well, which will be bringing more content in 2018, just more sports stuff. And everything we're doing, man, is the love of sports that I have. And you guys will love it as well if you listen.
And what's up with your writing? I know you do some stuff at the3pointconversion.com. Want to talk on that real quick?
Yeah, 3pointconversion.com, man, is a great site for sports, live updates, just as fast or even faster than the other big networks out there. And also we have a lot of great writers that cover everything. When I say we cover everything, I mean everything. We cover everything from football, basketball, boxing, hockey, soccer, hopscotch,
curling,
red light, green light. Cover everything in the 3-point conversion. And I'm one of the writers there who I do a lot of basketball and football, writing a little boxing here and there. But 3pointconversion.com is where you should definitely go for all your sports needs, man.
So let me throw this quick audible on you. Give me some thoughts on that cornhole tournament last week on ESPN2.
Hey, we was out there. They got some real accurate cornhole throwers,
Yeah, man. I thought that was funny when I tuned in last week and they had 4 cats on there, some championship for cornhole throwing. And they got some bands though. The winner got some, took home some money. So I was like, I might have a second career at something. I
For
stink
real.
at cornhole. But hey man, I know you do a lot of branding or segments on your show that you stay very consistent with. You know, that's one thing that I've kind of struggled with is staying consistent with segments or you know branding parts of the show. And I like that you do that. What's your favorite, you know, constant, you know, part of your show?
Well, at the end, we always do forgotten players. It's where we pay homage to players who may have not been great or very good, or was great but not recognized. And we just want to remind you of those players. And it's a segment where sometimes you bring back a player and you bring up their stats and their story, and people like, oh man, I forgot all about this guy who did this amazing stuff in the NBA. And this time, like my last forgotten player was Lou Hudson, and Lou Hudson was a player for the St. Louis/Atlanta Hawks back in the day. Played with Pete Maravich on those teams in the '70s, and you forget about those players over time. So I like to, bring light to those players and let you know that the NBA didn't start Michael Jordan or the NFL didn't start with, the Dallas Cowboys in the '90s. It was stuff before that that we should, pay homage to. So forgotten players is my favorite one. I really like sports trivia as well because I always bring on people who are very knowledgeable in sports. So I always do a lot of research and try to come up with the best questions to challenge their minds when it comes to sports trivia. And sports trivia is very something that a lot of people like because they like to participate in the show as well. So sports trivia and forgotten players are my babies of the show that I always bring to every episode.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Since you did touch on basketball, that was one thing that we were supposed to talk about earlier that I would like to get into before we talk about some of this Week 16 NFL stuff. Where are you right now with Michael Jordan and LeBron James, the greatest player of all time?
Yeah, I would still have Michael Jordan number one, but I can't lie to you and say that LeBron can't catch him. It used to be where it was like people would bring it up. You'd be like, man, that's blasphemy. Stop it. Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time. It's not close. But now when you see LeBron doing this in year 15, and doesn't look like he's going to slow down anytime soon. It look like he could do this for another 3-4 years. Able to put up these stats and be this efficient in year 15, going into year 16, 17, and so on. You have to put him in a conversation, even though he only has 3 championships. Team thing. So you can't just hold that over him forever and say you only got 3 chips. He's playing against some of the best teams of all time in these championships that he's lost. So I can't hold that against him and be like, well, Michael went 6 for 6. But LeBron playing against a Golden State team with, 2 of the best players of all time, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, and Klay Thompson, one of the best shooters of all time. So he's playing against some of these teams. And when you look back at it, you're like, man, LeBron had to go through some hard teams to get some championships. Now, the Eastern Conference hasn't always been as tough, but the finals, when you go to the Golden States and the San Antonio Spurs that he ran into, those are some of the greatest teams of all time, man. So when you think of individual players, LeBron's got to be up there, but I still got Jordan, but it's close. It's close.
To finish that off, if it was a game of one-on-one, both players at 26 to 28 years old, game to 10, who you taking?
One-on-one, I'm taking Jordan because Jordan's a killer. He's a scorer. That's what he does. So a one-on-one game, I think that Jordan will be able to score on LeBron more than LeBron on Jordan. But LeBron does have a size advantage that a lot of people, you don't realize how much bigger he is than Michael Jordan. So I think that will play a big aspect in the game as well. But I got to go with Jordan just one-on-one, that fadeaway, unstoppable. In a one-on-one game, I got Jordan winning that one.
When I asked you that, I was thinking LeBron, because of the size advantage, a different type of handle that he has now, that Jordan is more from A to B, just based on the era that he was in. But one thing that I always credit Jordan with was doing the same thing never got boring to him. Whereas I feel like LeBron could come down and get, 4 or 5 buckets in a row, driving the lane, or, maybe a mid-range jumper. And then the most important moment of the game, he would come down and take a fadeaway, 25-foot three-pointer. And it was like, bro, why would you have done that? And so I just feel like MJ stays more locked in with what's working and like what's successful. He doesn't get bored with that, where I think sometimes we see some lapses in LeBron's shot selection. I think that's because he's so strong, that a 25-foot fade away from him isn't, that's not it's not a high percentage-wise shot, but it's a flick of the wrist for him.
Yeah, definitely. LeBron, I feel like this year he's been much better at that. He's been going to the hole, and he's such a better three-point shooter now that those three-point shots aren't bad shots, selection-wise. So LeBron, it's like I said, it's incredible, man, to watch what he's doing. And like I said, I can't give him the top spot yet, but he is a close second for me.
Last question on that before we move on to the football. How do you factor in what we see in the East right now? It's not a lot of good teams below the top 2 or 3. And I mean, we look at right now, Atlanta is a team that just went from the Eastern Conference Championship Series and being a leader in the East, and now they only have 7 wins. The Pistons started out pretty good. Now they're middle of the road. Don't have an elite scorer on that roster. A lot of flawed teams in the East. Is that an argument against LeBron's greatness in any way?
I don't think so, because I think that it's always a shift. Like, you think back to when Magic Johnson was dominating with the Lakers. The Western Conference was just as bad as the Eastern Conference has been over the last few years and during that time. But we don't hold it against Magic that the Western Conference was bad at that time. So you think about that time. There's no really other Western Conference teams that you think about during the 80s. You're like, man, that team was a beast. It's all Eastern Conference teams. You think about the Celtics, the Sixers, the Pistons, the Bulls. When it comes to the Western Conference, you think about the Lakers and maybe Houston for a couple of years in the 80s, and that was it. So we can't, if we don't have to hold it against Magic, we can't hold it against LeBron. But I do think that this year the East is better, it's deeper. Like, the West is better up top. Like, you have your Houston, Golden State, and Minnesota, of course, and San Antonio. But after those 4 teams, the West drops off dramatically. I think in the East is actually deeper. You have more interesting teams. They may not be as good as the Western Conference teams, but I think they're deeper as far as the quality of teams going down the line. Like, your 7-8 teams in the Eastern Conference, I think, are better than the 7-8 teams in the Western Conference, which I'm a Pelicans fan, so it really hurts me to say, but I think that those Eastern Conference teams are a little better throughout than the Western Conference teams.
All right, man, let's jump into some of this football. We might touch on boxing before we get out of here, or something random. But I don't know if I have too many games this week. I know you might have put your sheet out there. I don't know if you tagged me this week on your predictions for the week. But I did want to know what's your thoughts on the return of Zeke to the Cowboys, and does that firm up their roster for a run? I know they still need some help, but does that firm up their roster for a run at the postseason?
Yeah, I think it's huge because they're going against a team in Seattle who looks broken right now. LA went into Seattle with their own shoes, stumped all over their furniture. It was like, man, F your couch, and just disrespected Seattle in Seattle. And after a game like that, I think they're pretty much done. And I think that Dallas is going to come in and do the same thing with Ezekiel Elliott. He's fresh, been out there in Mexico working out, good to go, lean. So I think that with him back, they'll show up the running game. They'll free up play action. That means that Dez will get more catches, Terrence Williams, Jason Witten. It'll free up everything with Ezekiel Elliott being back. I don't think they make the playoffs because they need so much help. They need Atlanta to lose twice. They need Detroit to lose. They have a lot of people in front of them, but I think they're going to end up being 10-6 and not make the playoffs, which sucks when you're a 10-6 team and you're a fan of that team. But I think that next year they'll have something to go look forward to, but they're not going to be in the playoffs this year because it's just too much in front of them.
Where are you with Dak and where in his status amongst the active quarterbacks in the league? I mean, this was a guy who I thought, was rated a little high, coming in at number 14 on that NFL 100 list that I think the players put together before the season. Obviously, we saw him have some setbacks and struggles without Zeke the first few games. I kind of blame more of that on Garrett and the coaching staff, but it seems like the brunt of all of that fell on the shoulders of Dak Prescott. But where are you with him as an NFL starter?
I think he's a quality starter. I think a lot of teams would love to have Dak Prescott. You could ask the Jets and the Bengals and all those type of teams that would love to have somebody like a Dak Prescott starting for him. With Dak, I feel like it took him a while to adjust without Zeke, but it wasn't on just Zeke. At that time, they're also missing their left tackle, Tyron Smith, who's probably the best left tackle in the league. So with him out, their backup left tackle was nowhere close to that. And no quarterback's good when the offensive lineman can't block. I don't care how good you are, how mobile you are. If your offensive line can't block for you, you're not good at all as a quarterback. So once he got some protection and that running game started going again with Alfred Morris, you saw how good he can be. I think Dak Prescott's going to be developing to a really, really good quarterback in this league. I don't know if he's going to be great, but I think he's going to be somebody who can be a really good franchise quarterback for 10, 12, 15 years for the Dallas Cowboys. And I believe in him a lot.
Okay. Looking at the AFC, how the playoff picture is shaping up. Are we relying on young Saxonville to go into Foxborough for the AFC Championship game so that we don't see, another Super Bowl appearance by the New England Patriots?
Yeah, I do think that Jacksonville has the best chance of knocking them off. When you think about Pittsburgh, I think Pittsburgh blew their chance when they blew that game last week. And I apologize for my roommate's dog making the sounds right here. But when you have Pittsburgh, I think that New England just owned them for the longest, right? And hold on, dog. Stop. So when you have Pittsburgh, man, they've been owned by New England for years now. And Jacksonville has that new young blood that's ready to go in there. And they have a perfect game plan for them. They're going to run the ball, keep Tom Brady off the field. Their defense, which can play man-to-man across the board, that's the perfect type of defense to go against New England. Pittsburgh tried it and it did work for a little bit in that game when they played man-to-man, but then Gronk just went crazy. So you need somebody who can stick Gronk. And I think that Jacksonville, with their centers and with their safeties and cornerbacks, do have a combination of people who can maybe give them different looks on Gronk and help defend that. So I think Jacksonville does have the best chance out of all the AFC teams to knock off New England in New England.
Do you hold that against Tomlin, that he struggled with beating the Patriots, but then we talk every week about Bill Belichick, in contrast or in comparison, is one of his strengths that's noted about him continuously is the fact that he takes away the best player or the first option of opposing teams. And then here it is, after being 5-6, or I believe it was 5-6, 5 out of the last 6 matchups against the Patriots, they lost. And then in a key game like this, we look up and Gronk has, 9 catches, 168 yards or something, 70-something yards coming in the fourth quarter or something. Is that a play? Do you hold the players' feet to the fire for nobody stepping up, or is this something that Tomlin is going to have to address?
Yeah, I think it was a coaching adjustment that was needed. As a player, if you're the guy they had sticking on was 5'9", 5'10", you only could do so much with Gronk by yourself. You have to make an adjustment and say, okay, we're going to double cover Gronk, and we still could play man across the board everywhere else. I didn't understand why you're trying to man up on Gronk when you don't have that type of player. There's only a few players in the league who could play Gronk one-on-one, and you don't have that guy on your defense. So I wouldn't hold it against a player. He only could do so much with a guy that size, and Gronk's arguably the greatest tight end of all time. So when you have that type of talent at tight end, you have to have one of the greatest safeties of all time if you're going to play that type of defense on him. And the guy's a good safety, but he's not somebody who can stick Gronk one-on-one. So I think that's a coaching adjustment that needs to be done.
All right. What's your reaction to Jeff Fisher this week coming out and saying 2 weeks ago, or I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a report out there that he was trying to assemble a coaching staff for a return to the NFL, which I believe I think right now he's tied for either having the most losses in the NFL or he has like the most mediocre record of all, in all-time coaching history. But he came out this week and says that, he thinks that he left LA in good shape. What's your reaction to that statement?
That laugh is my reaction. Jeff Fisher is out here wilding. Look, Jeff Fisher did make some good draft picks. Think about Ty Gurley and a lot of those defensive players they have. He brought in a lot of that talent. Now, the fact that he couldn't win with that talent let you know how bad of a coach he is. Sean McVay came in there and switched this around in 1 year. Jared Goff last year looked like a total bust. A lot of people was like, man, Jared Goff don't look like no dude that deserved the #1 overall pick. And now this year it looks like he's a Pro Bowler this year. So when you have a team that goes from that bad to this good without that much change on the roster, and the only thing that changed was you not being there, I don't think it's time for you to talk, buddy, and say that you deserve credit for this. When obviously you were probably the person or the main reason this team wasn't succeeding with all this talent that they did have. So maybe he should be a GM. He brought in some good teams, some good players, and maybe not be a coach. But don't say that you deserve credit for this, bro, because you don't.
And that's where I was thinking, like maybe with Marvin Lewis, maybe both of those guys have shown their value more so as team builders or, personnel development or, scouting, in some kind of scouting capacity or something. But as a guy that kind of ruined, in my opinion, Vince Young or just failed to and I know Vince might have had some different issues going on. Some personal stuff might have been going on for him too. But it just seems like there wasn't the effort there as far as we know in the public outside of the locker room. It doesn't seem like the effort was there from Fisher to interact with him in a manner to maintain a legitimate starter on his team. Vince had some comeback wins and some decent games at that point, and it just seemed like he just was like hands off on trying to reel him back in.
No, I definitely agree with that. Vince was rookie of the year. He was out here balling, and he had some personal issues as far as like his stability mentally and stuff like that. But I think that came after the stuff with Jeff Fisher. Like Jeff Fisher didn't want him there. He didn't want to draft Vince Young. And you could tell that. Like as a coach, you got to be like, okay, this is a roster I got. Let me make sure I make the best of these players. And he didn't do that there, and he didn't do that with the Rams. Mr. 8-8 needs to go ahead and chill and go ahead and just say, maybe I could be a GM somewhere because I have proven I can make good draft picks and good selections in that aspect. But coaching, he literally had 6 winning seasons in 22 years. That's crazy. Like the fact that you was able to coach that long with that lack of success is mind-boggling to me. So don't come out here talking because you see a team being successful now without you. I can't stand that.
For anybody that watches this link, y'all see how DA is dropping these stats on me here and there. Now I tell you, I joke with him all the time that a good part of a real part that makes his material very credible is the fact that he dumps those statistics on you, shooting percentages, splits, all kind of stuff that I'm like, man, I'm an eye test dude. I'm 42 years old, man. I'm an eye test dude. He's all in this new wave analytical stuff, but okay, that's why I had you on so that you can add that component to the show, man. Pay some homage to your shirt real quick, man. How real are the Saints for the Super Bowl, in your opinion?
I think we have a very real
chance. Try to be impartial. Now, go ahead, man.
I think we have a very real chance because I think the key to any team being able to win is being balanced. We could run, we could pass. Our defense is not great, but they're pretty good, and that's what you need. If you have a top 5 offense and your defense is ranked 15th, you have a great chance of winning. And that's what we've been doing all year. You know that with Kamara and Ingram, we can run that rock, go down your throat. And then we have Drew Brees back there, who this year hasn't been the Drew Brees of the past. He's only had to show up in certain moments. So now when it does come time for the playoff games where maybe the run game gets shut down, we have a Hall of Fame quarterback back there who can man the ship when that happens. So when you have a star quarterback like that, great running game, good defense, especially when you have defensive linemen like Cameron Jordan, who's a Pro Bowler this year, our rookie cornerback, Marshawn Lattimore, has shown himself to be a shutdown corner. When you have those components, those are things that you need to win. I'm not saying we're going to win Super Bowl, but we definitely have the parts in place to make a run this year.
Talk to me about It's one of the things. Brandon Graham is another one that comes to mind. I believe is the defensive end out of Philadelphia. We never heard of Brandon Graham in a contract dispute or, affecting the salary cap or anything. But the guy's been there for the last 7 or 8 years and is there every Sunday. I'm looking at Ingram, Mark Ingram. Again, I haven't heard anything about contract disputes or holding out. And one thing that I noticed with him, I felt like I thought it was a bad mix going there from the beginning because I thought he was a guy that needed like a volume guy that needed a lot of touches. And it seems like here he is 5-6 years into the league. And because he wasn't used so heavily up front, I feel like he's a really fresh, he might be 28 or 29 now, but I feel like he's a really fresh running back that now has the body still, but now knows the game inside and out and is just a pretty lethal dude.
Yeah, definitely. He's hit his prime. I believe he's 27. He's hit his prime right at the right time. Last year he had over 1,000 yards for us. And I think this year with the help of Kamara, that load's not on him again. Like you mentioned, he never had to beat a guy like in the past. We kind of ran Deuce McAllister into the ground. And I think we learned from that mistake because Deuce was a bad man. But Deuce, after like 5 years, had no knees because we ran him so much. And with Mark Ingram, he has kind of that same skill set as Deuce. And we want to make sure we keep him fresh as long as possible. And I think with Kamara and in past years when we had like Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles and those type of guys, it kept him fresh. So now that we have Kamara there, he's somebody who has showed that he has speed. I'm talking about Ingram has speed and elusiveness. And now, like you said, has that knowledge. He has a little patience now. Like he hit the hole, do a little Le'Veon Bell two-step, and next thing you know, he's gone. So I think that you make some very good points when you say that we didn't, run him straight into the ground like other running backs have been in the past. And that's really helped his career.
I think of like Steven Jackson, 6-7 years, all that pounding, all that wear and tear, and kind of unceremoniously stepped away from the game. And like you just said with Deuce McAllister, I mean, Steven Jackson was one of my favorite guys to watch, but no postseason experience or anything like that. And I think he was doing some stuff on ESPN on Sports Nation for a while, but I just think it's a great example to see how Mark Ingram has kind of been preserved. And another thing is to just be a part of a team and let things happen instead of get me out of here. Your man AP came down there and just blew up the locker room in some respects with I need so many touches and being vocal and whatnot. And Ingram just seemed like he never really complained and, became disruptive, even when, sometimes when, the genius tag was kind of being taken back from Coach Payton, and he was on the hot seat at some time. So I just think that's a good example of a long-term vision, I guess, in maintaining a team. Do you think the NFC South is the best football in the NFL right now?
Yeah, I definitely think so. You think about the Saints at 10-4 with all the things I mentioned about them. Carolina with Cam Newton and Christian McCaffrey, that running game, that passing game is starting to come along as well, and their defense with Luke Kuechly. Atlanta, who's the defending NFC champions, that's right there in the playoff picture as well. And Tampa Bay is even a talented team. For some reason, just can't get it together. So I think the NFC South, as far as up from top to bottom, has the most talent, and they've been executing this year as well. I don't know if all three teams will continue to be in the playoff hunt because we all play each other the last 2 weeks. But this year has definitely proven the NFC South is the best division. And the NFC South has had the last two representatives in the Super Bowl. You think about Carolina and Atlanta the last 2 years. So I think it's been proven that the NFC South is the best division in football.
All right. Hey, that was all the NFL topics for the day. I might have had one more, but I want to skip that because I might have an interruption coming in here in a minute. But since you are so heavy, you are a big-time follower of the NBA. I'm kind of a fair weather fan at this point in my life with the NBA, admittedly. But what's your thoughts, man, on this Lavar Ball situation proposing this Junior Basketball Association? I did talk about it on the podcast this week with this week's guest, but I just, like I said, you cover the game closely and, a big stat man, and I would imagine, have a lot vested in seeing a healthy NBA. What's your thoughts on Mr. Ball tinkering with kind of like the labor force a little bit, or the route to the NBA?
I actually think it's a good idea in theory to have a league where players who already feel that they're qualified to play professional and don't need college can go make a little money to supplement their income until they get to the NBA. Now, the only problem is it takes a lot to run a league. So where will the games be at? How much will you pay the players? How you get the money to pay the players? Because I know big baller brands doing okay, but it's not making enough to have, fund a whole league. And then it's not just going to be one and dones. You need more than one and dones to make a league, because there's only maybe 8, 9 one and dones per year. So you're going to need players who aren't going to be NBA players to go in this league as well. What do you do with those guys who aren't talented enough to make the league? Do they get to stay in your league for 4 or 5, 6 years? What do you do with those guys? And also, like I said, the backing. You need somebody to back this league. I think it's a great idea in theory, because you look at somebody like a Marvin Bagley at Duke, who's probably bringing in so much money for Duke right now because everybody wants to come and see him, and he's not getting a penny of that. So I love the idea of making sure that these players get paid what they deserve. But I think it's going to take a few years to even get that off the ground, because there's so many things that go into making a whole league. Like, that's what I think is an underrated aspect of it that people are not looking at. That's a lot of work.
That's what a big part of my concern was. I said some stuff on social media, and some of it wasn't too well received. There's really nothing personal, directed at Lavar Ball, even though I'm not a fan of some of his antics and the self-promoting and all of that. But could you see? Because a big concern is who's coaching it. Who are the coaches that are developing these young players on the court and off the court? Do you think it's some exposure, some experiences that young men could get exposed to in the college game? Going to practice every day, trying to balance, some student athlete responsibilities, interacting with the media, going through the conference tournament, going through the March Madness. Do you think the familiarity that fans get a chance to gain with seeing that guy perform, through March Madness? Do you think that this league could possibly replicate any of that? I mean, also, we don't. I heard it was proposed 8 or 10 teams. I know everything that's all these older institutions. They're evil now. Some of this stuff is antiquated. I can't be out here playing for free, so to speak. But is it any way to get around all of the infrastructure that this has?
Yeah, I think that the LeVar Ball's theory could bring that same exposure that college could, because there will be a lot of hype around it. Like, LeVar has done a great job, no matter how you look at the way he does it. He does a great job of staying in the news. Like, we talk about him, seems like every week there's a new LeVar Ball conversation. So I think he'll do a great job with bringing the league into that as well. And if they get, say, the number 1 and number 5 and number 8 high school players out of the nation to come play in that league for whatever year it starts, I think it will bring that same type of attention. Now, it also can help you in other aspects that maybe college can't. Like, LeVar Ball did mention that he wants to help them by teaching them how to manage money right away, instead of going to college where you don't really have that much money to manage. So I think that aspect of it is a good one, where players go straight to the NBA sometimes from college and don't have any financial backing at all, any financial education. And that's a lot of times you see them go broke on their first contract and stuff like that. So I think that's a good aspect of it. But it's also, when it comes to college, there is things that you can't replicate, from college. You can't replicate some of those moments that you'll have in the NCAA tournament when everybody's watching and it's nationwide and you have the backing of all these alumni behind you and things like that. So I think that college is a great experience. But if you are already qualified to go to the pros out of high school, I can see why you would say, I might as well go ahead and make this money, especially if your family's struggling. Why go through another year of struggling when you can see yourself making $10,000 a month, or even $5,000 a month to help out your family? And that's to play basketball, a lot of people are not making that much doing their job. So I think that it's a great idea in theory. Like I said, it'll take a lot of time to come to fruition. But for college basketball, I don't think you could ever replace college basketball, because there's no there's nothing like going to March Madness and winning an NCAA championship. That's the reason, like, we fell in love with Kemba Walker when he hit that step back jumper in the championship. And those moments we remember. I don't know if Lavar Ball's league will be able to replicate that, but it will be a different alternative that would be good for just competition, just to have something that the NCAA will have to think about and maybe say, oh, maybe you do have to pay the players if there's going to have this different, outlet for them. So I think it's a great idea that Lavar Ball does have this time.
All right, last question before I get you out of here, so we can go enjoy today's slate of games, I guess. What's the biggest story or two for you? I know, like I said, you do your podcast and your writing and whatnot. What's the one or two or three of the biggest stories as we move into the offseason this year from the NFL?
Moving into when you get into the offseason, one of the big things would be San Francisco. San Francisco looks like they have their quarterback of the future. So what do they do to build around that? Do they get wide receivers? Do they build the offensive line? Do they try to bulk up the defense? What will they do to try to go ahead and capitalize on what they have in Jimmy Garoppolo? He looks like the real deal. Also looking forward to what coaches get moved. What will Cincinnati do once Marvin Lewis is now going to be gone? Will they go move on from Andy Dalton? What will the Giants do? Will they move on from Eli Manning? There's a lot of storylines like that. Tampa Bay, will they move on from their coach? Because I think they made a mistake when they fired Lovie Smith in the first place to get this guy they have now, who they've underachieved. Will they go ahead and fire him and try to hire somebody else back? So there's a lot of things when it comes to coaches. Will coaches stay? Will they leave? What quarterbacks will stay? And in the draft, of course, who's going to draft a quarterback? And I'm really, like I said, for San Francisco to start, I'm really interested in them to see how they build off of this momentum that they have now going into next season. So that's one of the biggest things I'm looking forward to.
All right. Hey, man, thanks a lot for your time today. Like I said, it was kind of a last-minute thing, but, I really wanted to, get you on this week on the podcast. That didn't happen. And then, I just thought this was a great area to kind of – I'm doing some experimenting right now with seeing what I want to do with the live streaming stuff on the YouTube channel. But, again, thanks for your time, man. Have a great holiday season and, keep doing the hard work. And any last word from you?
Thank you for having me on.
Heavily tied. You seem to be heavily tied in on Twitter with all the retweets and stuff from me being on your show. I was like, this dude knows some people. So, any last word, to any of your podcast family or any of your listeners or subscribers or anything?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody who supports The Real Deal with Damian Adams. I definitely appreciate you having me on, and I definitely want to get on your podcast one day. We got to get that scheduled together for the next time. But just thank you. Follow me at The Real Deal, WDA, on Twitter and Instagram and Snapchat. And also check out the podcast, The Real Deal with Damian Adams, and the YouTube channel, The Real Deal with Damian Adams. Thank you again for having me on. Pay me no mind. I'm a big fan of YouTube channel and the podcast. Keep doing your thing, man.
Thanks a lot, man. Hey, enjoy the game today, man, and take care.
Yeah, you too.